In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Continue this on the next round. We've now moved to the second round, and we begin for 5 minutes with Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Thank you. Minister, in late September, the Toronto Star reported that there was over 1 million temporary residents that had expiring visas, and yesterday Statistics Canada said that they had not counted 38% of non-citizens. No wonder that Canadians can't find a family doctor. Will you support an amendment to ensure that your department cannot use the Part 7 powers of C-12 to mass extend temporary resident visas?
Thank you, member, for that question. I know you brought that forward on the committee, and look, I know you worked hard on these, and we appreciate. Well,
this is a new one. So
this is a new one.
Yes,
ask
it's
again.
on notice.
So this is a different one than you brought on the committee.
So will you support an amendment to ensure that your department cannot use the Part 7 powers to mass extend temporary resident visas?
Mass extend. So, did you not bring that to committee?
I used procedure in the House, which I can do.
Okay. So when we go back to the House, members will
you're
vote
here.
on that.
You're here. Is your department going to use the Part 7 powers to mass extend temporary resident visas?
That is not the purpose for that.
It's a yes or a no.
What I'm saying is that is not the purpose for those amendments.
I'm asking you.
The one example I will give you is during COVID, my understanding is the workers that were here at the time, and this is facts, were not allowed to leave the country, who were working here temporarily. So I believe that was an occasion where they could have, or maybe
So they
extended
did. You do
them
want
to
to
stay
mass
during COVID.
So you do want to mass extend temporary resident visas?
That's not what I said.
That's exactly what you just said.
That's not the purpose for C-12.
So I am taking it that the purpose of those powers, based on what you just said, is to mass extend the millions of temporary resident visas that are in the country.
I believe I testified when I was here before on the immigration provisions in C2, which are identical to C12.
You didn't testify on this.
No, but the same thing would follow on the whether you extend or the opposite of extending, annulling.
You were confused
These are in
the
exceptional circumstances. These are not something that we look to do.
There's 3 million people in the country on temporary resident visas. That is an exceptional circumstance. It's never happened before in Canadian history. It happened under your government. In the spring, you told me your government has no plans to remove them. You just said that if you had these powers during COVID, you would have extended temporary resident visas. So I don't want you to use your powers to extend temporary resident visas. That's bad. So can you tell the committee whether or not you intend to use those powers to extend the visas or not?
Let me clarify. No one minister will have that power individually, whether you're extending or doing the opposite of the extending.
So here's the thing.
These will go to cabinet. These will go to an OIC.
Yes.
These will be transparent. These are not something that will be done.
So just to be clear, our emergency rooms are overflowing. We have a youth jobs crisis. The provinces, including Quebec, are telling you they need more money because of the temporary residents. And you are now telling the committee that it is highly possible that you are going to use the powers in Part 7 to do that. No, this is my line of...
No, point of order, Ms. Rempel-Garner. Point of order, Ms.
For the purposes of the record, I did not hear the minister say those words. Let's just be clear about what was said
point of order?
and what was not said.
We are restarting your time, Ms. Rempel-Garner.
On that point of order.
You have another point of order?
Yes, I do. I appreciate that my colleague may likely be the minister in a couple of months.
Not a point of order.
But for now, I get to ask the current minister.
Not a point of order.
Thank you.
So please continue with your time.
Maybe I will be having this conversation with him in a couple of months. So, Minister, I understand the Liberals want to silence me and rescue you. They shouldn't let him rescue you. He's going to have your job. will you support an amendment to ensure that your government can't mass extend 3 million people because you have no plan to remove them? Yes or no? And like, this is really bad. Like, can you just
Listen,
be clear?
member, when you ask a question, I think you should be able to have decency to let someone respond. If you don't like any responses, then please continue.
I don't
to
like
do
your
what
word
you'd like.
salad. It's true.
So-
You are a very bad minister.
Oh, you
So
know what?
will you
I
support
prefer fattoush and tabbouleh to your salad at any time.
That is the oddest thing any immigration minister
Well,
has
and-
said at this committee. It's very
No,
weak,
but it's
and
my culture. I
will
can't-
likely
it
be
is what
added
it
to your
is.
performance review. So, will you
Thank you so
support
much.
a Part 7 amendment to ensure that your government cannot use the mass extension powers to, or the powers in Part 7 to mass extend millions of temporary resident visas?
So, member, you're
Your
free
answer
to make
literally-
any amendments you like within
Will
the
you support it?
procedure that is there. I will take a look, just like any reasonable minister, reasonable whatever.
do you
in
think
terms
millions
of
of
what you put
residents
forth.
should
Thank
be
you, Minister.
extended?
Thank you, Ms. Rempel-Gardner. That is time. Next, we have Michelle Rempel-Gardner for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. In December of 2023, a non-citizen went to a hotel here in Canada to meet a 15-year-old for sex, in which he had agreed to pay for these services. He only received 3 months of house arrest and was allowed to go shopping for 3 hours every Sunday throughout these 3 months. His sentencing was lessened so as not to affect his immigration status. Do you think the criminal inadmissibility component, so Section 36(1) of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act, do you think that that kept Canadians safe here in this situation?
Thank you, member, for that question. I know you know that sentencing decisions are made independently by the courts, where the federal government, though, is responsible for the law is for removals. But under the immigration law, a non-citizen convicted of a serious violent is subject to deportation.
Right, but I'll just stop you there for a sec. So you're actually, since you've had trouble understanding questions today, you, as the immigration minister, surprise, you're actually responsible for the Immigration Refugee Protection Act. And that section is under your portfolio. So this guy was convicted of a serious crime. They used a loophole in Section 36(1) to ensure that his sentence was reduced so that he could stay in Canada. Is that good or bad?
So there is no federal law that requires judges to reduce a sentence because of immigration consequences. That is the truth.
Right. So I'm asking you about Section 36. I'm just going to remind you, this is part of your portfolio. So this is your department. Do you think that that section is working? Do you think that, I'll give you another example. There was a 25-year-old who was on a study permit. He sexually assaulted an 18-year-old at a club in my city in Calgary. He was found guilty, and the judge reduced his sentence because of that provision in that bill you're responsible for. The definition of serious criminality, it doesn't work. I just want to feel like, do you think that's bad? Like, do you think that maybe we should change that so that people who are non-citizens who are convicted of things like sexual assault get auto-deported rather than just kind of sticking around and doing it again, maybe?
So we have legislation in front of us that will ensure serious crimes get dealt with seriously,
Which
including
legislation?
deportations. The immigration. So even
law?
the judge in the case said
No. Go back. Tell me
that
which law
we
you're
were not
talking about.
to override the seriousness of the offense. Might be a factor to
So you don't
consider,
know which
but
law
it
you
will-
just said?
Absolutely no. It would not override the offense.
I really think you have no idea what you're talking about. It's really sad. We're talking about non-citizens who are convicted of serious crime being allowed to stay in Canada. So we put forward an amendment to Bill C-12, which would have corrected this. I did your job for you. I think Peter might be doing your job for you in a couple of months. But you guys didn't support that. So I'm asking you as
of order,
like
Chair.
just somebody.
Yes, point of order, Mr. Fragiscatos.
Let's just maintain the focus on the subject at hand, which is immigration, please.
I would love to maintain the focus, but the minister, like,
We're back on your time,
the
Ms.
minister just
Rempel-Gardner.
doesn't, she can't even answer a basic question. So I'm asking you, you have people, non-citizens who have been convicted of sexual assault, and judges are using a serious criminality loophole that's in your bill, in your department, do you think that should maybe be changed?
People who are committing serious offenses will be deported. I'll tell you.
No, this guy wasn't. He's still here.
Well, we're talking now. I can't
minute.
talk. I don't know what year you're referring to. I
All
don't
of these
really know
cases, they're still here.
And again, I think what you're trying to do is, this is
Stand
an
up for
approach
victims?
that it's a recycled approach that we heard years ago that interferes with judicial independence and
you're
ignores the Supreme
pro-raper.
Court precedent. But again, I say to you, the courts have already indicated that serious offenses will be
You're
dealt with
pro-sexual
seriously.
assault guy staying in
and-
Canada. That's what we're hearing. Like, can't you even just say that this is wrong and you'll look into it? Like, did nobody even say, like, maybe you could just say, Minister, this is really serious. You should say it's serious. I'm going to look into it. Maybe we could work together on it. You just defended a guy who, like, sexually assaulted
don't know
somebody
the
and should be
cases. I don't know the
deported. And you're the
facts.
immigration minister.
I don't know the facts you're
I just
referring
told
to.
you. I've raised it in the House, and you guys have done nothing. And it's continuing every day. It's rampant in our justice system. You have the responsibility to do this, and you've done nothing. Why?
Thank you, Ms. Rempel-Gardner. Thank you, Minister Diab. And we begin with Ms. Rempel-Gardner. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So you're asking Parliament to give your department about $600 million, extra dollars, for the interim federal health program, and that is the program by which you give a lot of supplemental benefits like vision care and mental health supports to people even who have failed asylum claims. Do you think that it's fair that, like, let's say a Canadian senior who has paid taxes all their lives get less types of supplementary benefits than asylum seeker who has a failed claim, like somebody who's a bogus asylum claimant? Do you think, like, why should I give you $600 million for bogus asylum claimants when Canadian seniors can't get basic health care? How does that make any sense to you?
So thanks for that. Couple of things. One, if you took a look at the budget, we have introduced a copay to handle some of that.
How much do you expect people to pay?
But as well, the dollar amount that you referred to stems from the fact that it is an interim federal health program where the volumes were up from years ago.
Yes, because you #Welcome to Canada 300, 500, 600,000 people who have bogus asylum claims. I'm aware that the numbers are up, and that's why you're asking us for. Right. I just asked you, is it fair? Like, you're asking taxpayers, us to send you $600 million to pay for things like orthotics and vision care for people who have bogus asylum claimants and are still in the country. So is that fair? Why would I do that? That seems dumb to me.
So listen, I realize it's not something you would do, but I can tell you these money goes for people that are here because of human trafficking, goes for women that are here because of domestic violence.
Great, let's give it to those people. Why are you giving them to bogus people with failed asylum claims?
The duration of which these are temporary, so that they receive interim health.
So if somebody
measures.
has a failed asylum claim, they can still receive federal benefits. Why? That's dumb.
Again, we are introducing measures to ensure that we limit and curb those.
But
and
why
with
don't you
measures
just
that you
cut
are
it off?
obstructing, quite frankly.
Well, why? Yes, I'm accepting it. I think it's completely insane that you are giving better health benefits to people with bogus asylum claims than Canadian seniors. So I'm happy to obstruct that. Why wouldn't you obstruct that? Why wouldn't you say,
No,
this
you're
is banana
obstructing
crackers?
the fact that we're
Stop
trying
it.
to ensure that does not get done.
No, you actually are just asking. So if you look in the document you have in front of you, you've asked me to give you more than $500 million for health benefits for people who have no legal reason to be in the country that you can't deport. So make the business case. Pitch me. It's Shark Tank. Let's do it.
These are costs to cover interim health measures, emergency measures for people that are coming from war-torn countries.
But it's also for bogus asylum claimants.
And it's also for treating people with diseases. I think,
No. I want to be clear here. We've tried to pass measures to restrict, like if somebody has a failed asylum claim, bogus, that they should be deported rather than get benefits.
And that's exactly what we're doing. We're introducing measures to ensure that that speeds up, and that exactly
Yeah, but you're still
happens.
giving them benefits, so why would they leave? And you're allowing them to endlessly appeal. Why would you, like, this is crazy.
So the measures that we're putting in would curb all of that.
Yeah. Okay. Why are you still giving TFW work permits to fast food restaurants in major urban centers? That's crazy.
Again, as I
1
explained before, the ESDC goes through and decides where we have labor gaps. People who are getting these, businesses who are getting these have to go through an LMIA assessment.
Did you tell Patty, I'm a little uncomfortable issuing these permits? We have a 20% youth job crisis. I am not going to give Tim Hortons in urban centers work permits. We should change the program. Have you said that to your colleague?
Any employer that receives these goes through a strenuous process where they have to show they cannot find as well. It's 1% of our target.
But there's a lot of fraud in that, and I have a hard time believing that a fast food restaurant in downtown Toronto needs a TFW for basic work. So have you made any effort to close the program off? Like if you said, hey, maybe we should bet on Canadian kids and scrap the program?
We're always betting on Canadian kids. That's why we have what we have. As in terms of facts, there's a 70% decrease
That
in
is
the
time.
temporary foreign
Thank you, Ms.
worker permits
Rempel-Gardner.
in low-wage industries.
Thank you, Minister Diab. Colleagues, I'm going to ask again, please direct your questions and comments through the chair. Please direct your comments and questions through the chair. Thank you. Next, Minister Diab. Now we're going to begin with our first round of questions, which is for 6 minutes. And the first person we have is Mr. Redkop. Mr. Redkop.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you, Minister. I want to start with a troubling incident that happened at the Montreal Passport Office where passport officials told an Israeli woman that they could not put Israel on her passport. Minister, did you instruct Service Canada officials to not allow Israel as a country of birth on passports?
So thanks for that question. Familiar with that. We've received messages on that. IRCC department has responded to some media outlet. Definitely not. Israel is a country, and anybody who is born in Israel can put that in their passport.
So can you supply the Passport Canada policy documents that this official would have referenced to make their decision?
So the policies would be handled by Service Canada, but certainly I don't personally have them, and I wouldn't have them myself. But I am aware because there's been a number of questions raised, and the Department of IRCC's worked with ESDC on that issue.
So as the minister responsible for passports, do you condemn the rogue behavior of that agent then?
Listen, Israel is a country, and
so do you condemn
there
the
has
behavior
been no
of that
changes
agent?
in those policies.
So do you condemn the behavior of the agent?
I don't understand the word condemn. I'm not sure what that means. Obviously, that was not, that's not correct.
Let me put it another way. So your deputy minister is right beside you. Would you instruct him to reprimand or fire these employees for denying the existence of Israel as a country?
They're not our employees.
Should you be speaking to your counterpart and asking for them to deal with that employee?
Well, the minister responsible for the file would be obviously speaking with department and staff on that.
So you've spoken to that minister about this issue?
When it first came to understand what the relationship is between IRCC and ESDC.
In your opinion, is Jerusalem considered to be part of Israel?
Is Jerusalem considered? Listen, people have the right to put where they're born.
So if you put Jerusalem, is that
born.
Israel?
Pardon?
If you put Jerusalem, is that Israel?
Well, we put the country of birth. I know.
Okay, let's move to the, you mentioned in your opening statement about the one-time initiatives to recalibrate our immigration system. So there's 115,000 protected persons and 33,000 temporary workers. So I'm a little confused. What category are they going to show up on the levels plan when they're being reported? Are those humanitarian and compassionate people?
Okay, yeah, so let me start with, if you'll allow me, if not, someone else will, but the protected person in Canada category, if I can explain to you the definition of that.
Well, I don't need that.
Okay, so your question, no, did not
so I'm
give
wondering
me
about
the idea that
okay.
maybe perhaps You go ahead and ask that again.
Okay, so you put in the plan, well, you didn't put in the plan, you put in a little asterisk at the bottom of the plan, where, by the way, we're going to add another 115,000 people to this plan. So the plan is actually going to be higher than you said. I'm just curious where those people are going to show up in the plan once they actually are granted PR.
So the addition of that number is in addition to the plan.
I
That is
understand.
correct.
And so what line on the plan are they going to show up as?
Well, they're in the budget. It was presented in Parliament. It's there, transparent.
So the number-
Everybody is seeing it. They are in addition to the plan. To the
But I'm confused. You're saying they're in the budget, but they're in addition to the budget. So which is it? Are they in the budget or in addition to the budget?
not the budget. They are in addition to the level plan
Okay.
for, it's a one-time initiative over the next 2 years.
So when you said the levels were going to be 380,000 or whatever, they're actually going to be higher than that, is what you're saying?
Again, it's very transparent. The document is there.
Well,
Those are the numbers.
I would
For the
disagree
next 2
that
years,
it's...
these are one-time initiatives.
But
These
Minister,
are people who have
I
been
would
living.
disagree that it's transparent, because you're saying, on the one hand, it's this number, 380,000, and on the other hand, you're saying, by the way, we're going to add in another X number of people. We don't know how many it's going to be. I don't find that transparent at all.
So again, these protected persons in Canada have been living here for years. They are working, they're paying taxes.
I understand there's
They
3
have
million people like
housing,
that.
and this is the plan to bring them faster into permanent residency in a 2-year time
So
span.
is that why you put the unprecedented powers in C-12 to mass approve documents, is for this category of people?
Those would have absolutely nothing to do with these people. These people already have the right to stay in Canada.
How do they have the right to stay in Canada? Were you going to process them one at a time, or like, how are you going to process so many people at once? We've been struggling, your government's been struggling to process files for years, and all of a sudden, you're magically going to approve 115,000 files? How's that going to happen?
So
1 minute.
It will come from the resources that are there. The department already has actively been looking at that. It will not take away from any officers that are processing other items. The
Your
department has already been looking at that and has that under
So
control.
you've somehow figured out how to suddenly become more efficient in the department, is that what you're saying?
We're always looking at
Of
efficiencies.
course, of course. Just a quick question on the ZD program. In 2023, you just established a program for these folks, survivors from Iraq. They're in the queue along with hundreds of thousands of other people. And I'm told that folks who applied 2 years ago are just now starting to be contacted. So how many Yazidis have arrived in Canada under this program?
I can get you that from the official who's here.
You know, actually, what you could do, just to simplify this, is if you could just provide a report to the committee on the program, you know, how many applied, how many have been
Well,
accepted.
no, I think he can give you that information right now.
I think my time is up.
The time is up, so perhaps you
Okay,
can
next
respond in the next one.
Please provide a report. Could you do that? Could I just
th-
get
Question.
confirmation?
We'll give it to you in the next question.
Thank you, Mr. Redekop. And
Anytime you hear Mark Carney talking about trade with the US or tariffs on Canadian exports, you should just say, who cares, change the channel, and tune him out, because that was his message to you. So you know what, Mark Carney, this part's especially for you. On behalf of the millions of Canadians you've let down and insulted, every time you open your mouth in Parliament, our message to you, who cares?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I stand today to provide some perspective on the Liberal government's 2025 federal budget and its implementation. I've had the chance to speak with many of my constituents in Bowmanville, Oshawa North, and with Canadians across our country to gather feedback on the vision for the future of Canada that is expressed by the Liberal government in this budget. I want to start with one of the signature items in this budget that we've heard Liberal members mention here in the chamber on many occasions as a point of pride. They mention it as a statement of progress, but the reality is that it is a huge red flag for what kind of economy the Liberal Prime Minister is intending to build. They mention the National School Food Program and the fact that they are introducing it as a permanent feature of the federal government as a positive thing. Look, they're even clapping now, showing how out of touch they really are. They say they want to fund this for years to come. And yet the concern that many Canadians have is that they don't actually want to be dependent on the federal government to feed their children. What they want to see from the federal government is efforts to bring down the cost of food. It is a fact that parents are having a tougher time affording food. It is a fact that over the last decade, the cost of food has skyrocketed year to year. It is a fact that keeping up with grocery bills and other bills is a huge source of stress for Canadian families as food bank lines get longer every month. And in this situation, Canadians expect to see the federal government do everything in its power to bring down the cost of groceries. But we saw in the lead up to this budget that the Liberals were actually quite insincere in promising to work with other parties to solve our country's problems. In the lead up to the budget, Conservatives provided multiple proposals for how the cost of food could be brought down, including proposals that would remove needless taxes on Canadian agriculture and food packaging, taxes that are passed on to the Canadian consumer at the grocery store. But the Liberals didn't want to work with us, and they didn't want to adopt any of those proposals, which is their right. If they want to be obstructionists, that's a choice that they get to make here every day. But there were other institutions in this country that also offered policy ideas to bring down the cost of food, like Canada's Competition Bureau, which has been recommending for years that the federal government increase competition in the grocery industry to lower the cost of food. Of course, the Liberal budget didn't include any references to that either. Instead, what did we get? We got a vision for the future of Canada by the Liberal Prime Minister that makes it clear that bringing down the cost of food is not their objective. In fact, what they want to do is normalize the idea that moms and dads cannot afford food for their own children and instead require government assistance in order to do that. We should all be alarmed by that because for years and years and years, decades and decades throughout our history, the federal government knew that its purpose was to create the conditions for families and communities to thrive so that parents could buy their own food and provide food to their own children. And yet what we have seen from the federal government is a significant shift in another direction, a shift away from that primary responsibility and instead toward the idea that families and communities need the government's help because the economy is so unaffordable. You know, this is not what a healthy society is supposed to look like. In a healthy society, families and communities are independent enough from the government that if they don't like what the government is doing, they can very easily tell the government to kick rocks. That is not the vision for Canada that the Liberal Prime Minister articulates in his federal budget. And in fact, the logic of the Liberal government was betrayed by the Liberal member from Vancouver Centre when she criticized us, when she criticized Conservatives and said, and I quote, "We believe that parents would prefer to feed their kids themselves rather than have the government feed them."
Hear, hear.
Yeah, that's true. We do believe that.
100%.
And we believe the vast majority of moms and dads across this country feel the exact same way. And so the vision that the Liberals are articulating is not one of compassion, it's one of dependence. But they have sold the National School Food Program and its permanency as a compassionate and noble idea. But let's continue to explore this vision for the future of Canada expressed by the Liberal Prime Minister in his budget. He says he wants to be compassionate. Well, I would ask why then in this document that is hundreds and hundreds of pages, does the word addiction appear once? Why in the midst of an addiction crisis that is harming families all across this country, harming people of all generations, destabilizing our communities, would a compassionate government, as the Liberals say they are, pay such little attention to such a crisis? Well, I would argue because they're frankly just not as compassionate as they would like for us to believe. In fact, when they do mention addiction the one time in their federal budget, they make a point to say that federal transfers to provinces to deal with this issue will remain the same over the next several years, which means that even though we have a piling amount of evidence that the addiction crisis is getting worse, they actually offer no new money for this. This has been a very serious issue in my community of Bowmanville, Oshawa North. And as I have visited young people across this country, it is one of the top issues that I hear from students because they all know somebody who's been affected by the addiction crisis. We have seen since January 2016 over 53,000 opioid toxicity deaths. In the first 3 months of this year, over 1,300 people died because of opioid overdoses. And yet, in a budget that shows the vision of this country, the federal government has decided to pay very little attention, offering no new resources and offering no vision for how we will help our friends and neighbors overcome their challenges. That is not what compassion looks like. And so forgive me for calling their bluff when they say that they care a lot and they're leading with their heart, because in a budget that increased the federal deficit annually to $80 billion, they couldn't spare a single extra penny for this problem. Let's further explore their vision for the future of Canada, shall we, Mr. Speaker? Because they also present their 2025 federal budget, the Liberal Prime Minister does, as if it is about sovereignty and strength and nation building. That's what they say. And yet we see snuck into the budget on page 100 a very interesting, and for many people across our country, alarming idea. And I will quote, "The government will also consider options for the privatization of airports, critical public infrastructure that a truly sovereign and strong country would take very seriously." The Liberal government sneaks in the idea of selling it off to public interests as one line in a budget, hoping that in the hundreds of pages, people probably don't pay enough attention, because they certainly didn't mention that when they asked Canadians to vote for them in April. The Liberal Minister of Transport was actually written a letter by the national president for Unifor expressing concern over this idea, concern I've also heard from many of the unionized workers that I am proud to represent from Bowmanville, Oshawa North. And in that letter, the president from Unifor says, and I quote, "Canada's airports are vital economic hubs and public assets. They require public investment and democratic stewardship, not divestment to private interests." So once again, the claims of the Liberals that they are concerned about sovereignty and strength betrayed in the 2025 federal budget. I look forward to seeing the Liberal Minister of Transport respond to that letter and to explain to the Canadian people what exactly they mean by considering privatizing critical public infrastructure. But my point remains, Mr. Speaker, that as we explore the vision articulated for the future of our country, it is not what the Liberals have honestly presented. In fact, it is an alarming one. It is one where affordability is not resolved. Their vision is one where more families are dependent on the government to feed their children. It is a vision where the addiction crisis does not get the attention it deserves. And it is a vision where big issues like the privatization of public infrastructure are mentioned as a throwaway idea by a government misrepresenting itself as concerned with our sovereignty and our strength. This is why I oppose the federal budget and why we should all be very concerned about its implementation. Thank you very much.
Hear, hear. Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's pick up on the caring attitude. And I want to go back to the dental program, the pharmacare program, and to focus on the national school program. When we take a look at the national food program, this is something that was not an issue, or has been an issue, I should say, for generations. When I was elected back in 1988 in the Manitoba legislature, people were talking about children going to school on an empty stomach. For generations, nothing was done dealing with that issue. There were kids going to school, not being able to learn, and this isn't just me, this is professionals saying this. And when the Prime Minister made that program permanent, that is good for the overall nation and all children in every region. Does the member not agree that it's been an issue for many, many years?
The Honourable Member for Bowmanville, Oshawa North.
I appreciate the member opposite continuing to affirm that we are correct when we say this Liberal government does not have a vision for strength and independence for communities and families, but continues to present federal government dependency as a solution to the very economic problems that have been created under Liberal leadership over the last decade. You would think that the member just showed up, but as he mentioned, he's been a politician since 1988. I was 1 year old when he first got elected. And every problem that's been created in the last decade, the government then positions themselves as a solution, not seeing the irony in this vicious, weird cycle and vortex of bad public policy.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Shefford.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Sunday, I met with volunteers who were organizing a charity drive, and today is the media food drive. There will be a food drive in Saint-Césaire soon, and a number of other ones, for example, in Granby. There's one in Rougemont on Saturday. So this is a period where charity drives are underway, and food drives. And more and more, I've been hearing everywhere about the reports showing that the need for food has gone up. And one of the recommendations is that old age security be raised, because clearly it's not enough now. However, in this budget, there's nothing for seniors. They boast on the other side about the New Horizons program, but that doesn't put food on the table. Seniors are on a fixed income. They can't put food on the table. Do the Conservatives agree, as they used to, that we should give the same amount in old age security to all seniors, including people between 65 and 74?
The Honourable Member for Bowmanville, Oshawa North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to plug the fantastic work done by food banks in my home community of Bowmanville, Oshawa North, Clarington East Food Bank, the Salvation Army Food Bank, St. Joseph's Food Bank, full of great volunteers committed to making sure that the problems created in our economy by bad stewardship and bad leadership here in Ottawa can be resolved by the wonderful charity and hard work of wonderful people in my community. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is an honor to ask a question of my neighbor, the member from Bowmanville, Oshawa North. We each share a portion of the city of Oshawa, and in whom we represent. And his heart for youth and young people is probably what resonates the most in this House. His conversation about addiction. But I would also like to give him an opportunity to address the cost of food. It's doubled. Income hasn't doubled. The cost of, the amount of money folks are making hasn't doubled. And in Oshawa, we have an unemployment rate of nearly 10% now. And I would like my good friend, the Honourable Member from Oshawa North, to comment on that and our youth unemployment as well, if he could.
Honourable Member for Bowmanville, Oshawa North.
Yes, I thank the member from Oshawa. She serves her constituency incredibly well. We do have a very serious unemployment problem in our part of the country, also affecting all parts of the country. We also have a very serious youth unemployment problem. I want to stress to everyone listening in this House, I speak to young people all the time. They see what is happening. They work hard, they go to school, they hope to get a career and a future, to own a home, start a family, do whatever they want to do, start a business, whatever their dreams are, and yet they are constantly seeing evidence that it is only going to get harder and harder. What we see here in the 2025 federal budget is an out-of-touch government thinking that young people want to see more state dependency as a solution to their problems, but they want to thrive as independent people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, yeah.
Guides my approach across all of housing and infrastructure. I'm prioritizing federal investments to build complete, connected, and resilient communities where everyone has access to a home that they can afford. And I look forward to answering your questions. Merci à tous. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. We will begin by first welcoming back Mr. Aitchison to the committee. Mr. Aitchison, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for coming. I want to get right into it. You indicated that removing the GST from all new homes under $1.3 million was too sweeping a measure. Yet the CMHC reports that we need to be building about 480,000 homes a year, and your government, in fact, during the campaign promised to do 500,000 homes a year, and yet starts have stalled, basically. So given the scale of the housing crisis, could you tell this committee what concrete benchmarks your government is using to decide whether the incremental steps you've announced if they're going to work, if they are working, and if you need to take bigger steps?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. So the initial commitment to implement a first-time home buyers GST break is still not through the House, as members will know. We want to see that implemented as soon as possible because it will create opportunity for first-time home buyers, up to 50,000 first-time home buyers to access housing, save $50,000
Minister,
on
I'm just going to interrupt you for 1
home.
second. I don't need you to describe the programs to me. I'm reasonably familiar with them. What I want to know is what benchmarks are you using to determine whether you need to do more than just the first-time home buyers rebate?
Well, the focus initially to the member is to provide that support to first-time home buyers, to young Canadians who can't access the market currently. That should be our first priority right now, is to make sure we get an affordability measure to young Canadians during these times. And that's a significant investment, about $4 billion worth of tax revenue.
What kind of numbers do you need to see for you to know that's working?
Well, the numbers that we look at CMHC is our top source of research and data. They have a significant team that provides that for the industry and obviously for governments. And CMHC data reflects the realities across the country as well as market data that we see as well. And obviously it's important to track all of it. The housing starts are different in different markets across the country. Obviously, the GTA and Vancouver are very low in terms of housing starts right now, but other markets are doing very well.
Okay, thanks, Minister.
Alberta.
It's clear that you don't actually have a number or any benchmark that you're going to share with us now. But let's go back to that interview. In that same interview, you said, and I quote, "We can't roll the dice with some of these bigger moves. We'll try some incremental steps and see if they make a difference. If they don't, then maybe we will have to make some bigger moves." Builders are telling us that pre-sales are collapsing right now, particularly in the GTA and the Lower Mainland. Projects are being shelved. Employees are being laid off. So how does the government justify waiting for results when these delayed decisions mean thousands of job losses and fewer homes getting built?
Through the chair, I think the most troubling is the delays that the member's party has done to this first-time homebuyers tax break. It has been before the House of Commons since June. It still is not through due to the procedural delays that the opposition has put forward. That's held back an opportunity to provide up to $50,000 per first-time homebuyer to get the housing market going. And as I said, it's different in different markets. So providing a broad GST break in markets that are doing very well, for example, in Montreal or in some of the markets on the prairies.
Minister, I just want to stop you for 1 second because you're trying to put the blame here on conservatives, but the fact of the matter is the situation is dire. You would agree that we're in a housing crisis?
I agree we're in a housing crisis. That's why we shouldn't be delaying the first-time
I guess my question then
tax.
is how if it is in fact a crisis, what on earth makes you think that incremental steps and waiting to see what happens is a good approach?
Through the chair, when I speak of incremental, $13 billion for Build Canada Homes is a massive, it's an unprecedented investment strictly in non-market affordable housing. $1 billion into transitional supportive housing because homelessness is a crisis. We are focused on where we have a crisis and those direct interventions with significant investment. As I outlined with the National Housing Strategy and with Reaching Home, these are the largest investments Canada has ever made in homelessness and affordable housing, and we're taking it to the next level. We need the rest of the House to support.
If we need 500,000 units a year, we need 500,000 units a year for the next several years, which your government promised to do, which the Prime Minister promised during the campaign. We're talking about trillions with a T of investment in housing. So $13 billion might seem big to you, but we know full well that one of the biggest impediments to getting homes started and getting homes built is the cost of local government and the delays at the local level, particularly in the Lower Mainland and the GTA, where this is the epicenter of the housing crisis. It's where the situation is, in fact, the worst. Economists like Mike Moffat, who has advised your government on a number of occasions on housing, has warned that without decisive action, Canada risks a prolonged construction slowdown and an even deeper supply gap. If the government is so reluctant to make a big move, and I will challenge you that $13 billion is not a big move. What's your plan what's your plan to get the private sector moving again and building in some of these centers where it's too expensive?
Yeah, well, the private sector is delivering a lot of housing in most of the Canadian markets. It's Vancouver and Toronto that are challenged, and that's where the first-time homebuyers tax can make a real impact. That's where apartment construction loan program is delivering record levels of rental housing, working with the private sector very directly through CMHC. We're seeing housing starts about 4.6% up year to date versus last year. So the industry is building right now. We have to be looking forward several years.
Thank you.
And that means investing significantly.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, your department back in October spent about $97,000 on a getaway to get some inspiration on the homelessness crisis. And we know the homelessness crisis is a crisis. You just admitted that in your testimony. And I just want to read, were you aware of this conference?
Yes, through to the member, I did speak at that conference in Montreal, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness Summit, which is the largest gathering of people working on homelessness.
Do you think that was a good use of money?
Alors, Monsieur le Président, ce n'est pas le sujet du...
Point of order. Point of order. Okay. Hello, this is the interpreter speaking. This is the interpreter speaking. This is the interpreter speaking. Huh? This is the interpreter speaking. Can you hear the interpreter? Can you hear the interpreter? Yes? Okay.
Time is from the beginning?
From the beginning.
Okay, thank you. So back in October, officials from your department spent $97,000 on a getaway on a conference to get inspiration on the homelessness crisis. And you had just admitted in your earlier testimony that it's a crisis. And of course, it's a crisis that's caused by this Liberal government. Were you aware of this crisis? Or were you aware of this $97,000 being spent on this conference?
I attended the conference, spoke at the conference, and met with a number of Government of Canada staff who were at the conference, which is the most significant homelessness conferences.
Get the $97,000 to. And I'm going to read the purpose of it. According to the documents we have, the purpose of this conference is to arm policymakers, funders, researchers, advocates, community leaders, and frontline workers with inspiration, end quote. Do you think that's a good use of money?
Through the chair, I think it's the most important homelessness conference in the country, and that's consistent with the funding that's been allocated in previous years to make sure that the Government of Canada is present and represented, and the programs that we provide can be communicated.
Do you feel inspired? The purpose was to get inspiration, so do you feel inspired?
I think the purpose was for education. It was also for the number of our programs to be able to meet with all of the local proponents, all the organizations that work on homelessness were able to connect to
our a homeless employees. Shelter in Ottawa, or maybe back home in Vancouver. We know homelessness was up 38% while you were Vancouver's mayor. Maybe it would have been better just to visit a homeless shelter, or it would have been better use of money or abuse of time.
Excuse me, we do have translation again as an issue. It's just in English. Okay, is it now being interpreted to French? Your time has paused. Testing, testing. Are you interpreting to French? It's good? Okay. Continue, Mr. Ho.
The minister can answer the question.
It's a very important conference for our government staff who administer the programs. When we're investing billions of dollars to do the work, we need to connect with the people who do the work.
An actual shelter and see what the problems are with the folks that are.
Many of us that work on this homelessness initiative visited shelters. I understand
Okay,
it on the ground. This is the
going to
largest
continue
gathering,
moving
a
now.
conference
So
of people working
I'm not
on
getting
it.
an answer from you, so I'm going to move to the next question. So
I'm giving you an
your
answer.
department officials admit that you faked a $32,000 construction site on TV for cameras when the Prime Minister made a housing announcement a few months ago. Do you think that's a good use of money?
Through the chair, well, that's incorrect as well. Those homes were constructed on the site. The whole purpose with modular housing is it can be put together and taken apart readily.
They were disassembled.
One of those
afterwards.
homes was sent to Nunavut
Could it not have
immediately
gone
thereafter.
to?
The other was taken apart and moved to another site where it was constructed.
You spent $32,000 on it, which you could have, at least go to an existing site and then maybe do the photo op there. But you chose to build one just to disassemble it, and then $32,000 that could be used towards a down payment for a young family. Actually, $32,000 after 10 years of this Liberal government is no longer enough for a down payment. So you don't think that you could have gone to an existing backdrop, maybe an existing construction site as a backdrop?
I think it was important to demonstrate the effectiveness of modular housing, that it can be put together quickly on a site and moved off of the site. That modular home went to Nunavut, where it is. We're doing 700 homes with the government of Nunavut that are modular builds.
I want to go into the latest Parliamentary Budget Watchdog report, which they said, quote, the government has not yet laid out any plan to achieve their goal, their housing goal. And your election campaign promised to build 500,000 homes a year, to double it, by adding an extra 250,000 homes per year. And the latest report said it's just going to build 5,000 homes per year over the next 5 years. Do you see that as progress? I mean, that's only, 2%? Of the target reach? Do you think that's progress?
Through the chair, the PBO report does not take into account all of the housing programs that are currently operating. It's strictly looked at the Build Canada Homes investment of $13 billion, and when you gross that up to the number of homes that will be built, it came up about 87,000 homes from that $13 billion is what their estimate is. It did not account for all of the housing investments that are being made.
500,000 per year, so over 5 years that'll be 2.5 million homes. I mean that's still a drop in the bucket. Do you agree?
No, I don't. I don't agree with the assumptions made in that report, which do not account for all of the housing programs that this government.
Liberal mouthpiece that's given the report.
No, the report does not account for all of the housing programs, such as the National Housing Strategy, our largest housing program. The numbers for that are not included going forward in that report. So it disregards that this government is very committed to affordable housing and we're already in a renewal process with the National Housing Strategy, working with provincial and territorial ministers. We made a commitment about that with those ministers in September this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Ho. I would remind members again, it's your time that you're questioning, but please give the person you direct the question a reasonable amount of time to answer for the benefit of the interpreters who have to interpret. But it is your time, but the rules say give a reasonable amount of time and not to be interrupting.
Oh, yeah.
Madam Kobena for 5 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are for Minister Robertson. Thank you for being here and for giving us your time. I represent the riding of Newmarket Aurora. In Newmarket particularly, we do have a homelessness problem. And I have to ask you about this $97,000 spent. I cannot find a way to justify this to the people in my riding that see it. They see the people, our neighbors on the streets and struggling to find home and shelter and food. I can't walk up to them and say, I know you're homeless, but it's okay. We spend $97,000 or the minister spent $97,000 to learn about it. How do you suggest I justify that to the people in my riding?
Through the chair, so the investment in government staff who were attending and in many cases making contact with many of the homeless providers and support services These are Government of Canada
may I
employees who are
clarify that
there
it's
to
not,
help
it's not an investment.
assist.
It's not an investment. It's an
They're
expense.
making sure
it's not an
that we are
investment.
connected
it's not
to
gonna
the
create
people on the
cap-
ground who are
it's
doing
not
the work
capital
on
formation.
homelessness.
There's not going to be an asset. It's not an investment. It's an expense. It's an expense. We're not going to see a return on that money. It's not an investment. And I have to justify it to the people in my riding. $97,000 spent to learn about homelessness. How do I tell a constituent of mine who is homeless that your government spent $97,000 learning about how he is homeless?
Through the chair, so the Government of Canada is investing billions of dollars in solutions to homelessness. We need the people who work for the Government of Canada to be connected on the ground to all the people who are doing the work, who are operating shelters, who are helping people into supportive housing. We want to make sure we're well informed and well connected to the large community of people who support people
Minister,
who are homeless.
My question
and
is quite
that's
simple.
why
My
we had a
question
large
is very
attendance
simple,
there.
very narrow. How do I justify that expense to my constituent?
We need to be sure we are connected to the people who serve the homeless population across Canada. We need to make sure we're effective in rolling out our new Build Canada Homes program with supportive housing. There were a lot of meetings. There was a lot of information shared. There were a lot of relationships built with the people who are serving across Canada, the communities that are challenged with homelessness like yours. We want to make sure we're connected and doing the good work.
A lavish conference, travels, meetings upon meetings upon, it's not going to solve this gentleman's problem that I'm speaking about. Why not take that money? Why not take that money and instead of organizing meetings upon meetings, actually come into the riding and give it to the people?
Order.
The witness has answered the question many times, and it's relevant to the mandate.
It is not a point of order. Continue, Ms. Kobana, but I would remind members again to not speak over one another for the benefit of the interpretation. We need interpretation to conduct a meeting. You have the floor.
My question. Okay. Yeah, I just think it's very hard to justify that expense to somebody who's struggling from homelessness and say that your government spent $97,000 learning about their homelessness. There is no justification. Switching topics, the Missing Middle Initiative told Canadians that, quote, the real crash is still condo sales are down 89%, ground-oriented sales down 65%, guaranteeing an even deeper downturn in 2026 and beyond, end of quote. Do you agree with the industry experts that Canadians need to prepare for an even worse housing crisis?
Well, as I've said earlier, we are in a housing crisis that has been decades in the making. It's not something we solve overnight, but we have to be relentless in investing in affordable housing. Build Canada Homes is focused on non-market housing, and the Government of Canada has never had a laser focus on non-market housing. We now have a one-stop shop that is focused on delivering that affordable housing at scale. And that's a huge part of the housing crunch that we face. The market is facing real challenges in Vancouver and Toronto, and that is something that
transition to electricity, but you know where that electricity is going to come from, Mr. Speaker? From Brookfield-owned hydro plants. While Brookfield's billions vanish into Bermuda bicycle shops, Algoma's families are left in the cold. Conservatives will never stop fighting for Canadians this Christmas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Orleans.
Mr. Speaker, on November 29, our community came alive as thousands of residents, including families, children, and even a few pets, all gathered along Saint-Joseph Boulevard to witness the magical Orléans Santa Parade of Lights. More than 60 beautifully designed floats made their way down our main street, each meticulously crafted, decorated, and sprinkled with that special Orléans charm. Mr. Speaker, the parade is more than just a tradition. It is a testament to the Ottawa Firefighters Association, the volunteers and the partners whose dedication brings our community together year after year.
Mr. Speaker,
I'd like to wish the community of Orleans and all of you a happy holiday season.
Hanukkah. Joyeux Noël, bonne fête.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and happy Hanukkah. May this season bring you peace, warmth, and meaningful moments with your family, friends, and loved ones.
New Year. Bonne année 2026.
Happy New Year 2026.
Edmonton Manning.
Speaker, in the Christmas story, Dickens wrote, and I quote, "Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comfort," end quote. Under the Liberals, it's millions in need. My constituents in Knight says, and I quote, "I can barely afford to eat. A lot of people are in the same situation and feel helpless," end quote. In 2015, the Canadian grocery bill was $159 a week. After a decade of Liberal government, it has doubled to $338 a week, which is $17,500 a year. The Prime Minister told us to judge him by their experience at the grocery store. Scrooge famously said, and I quote, "I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I cannot afford to make idle people merry," end quote. Why does that seem to be like a Prime Minister quote?
L'honorable député de Saint-Boniface-Saint-Vital.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Boniface-Saint-Vital.
Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people go missing. Delays cost lives. Every minute matters. Last week, I had the honour of attending, on behalf of the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations, the launch of the report of Manitoba's Indigenous-led Red Dress Alert pilot program. The organization Giganawe Nimananig, We All Take Care of Them, led the engagement sessions and the development of this important report, which lays the groundwork for a holistic safety framework, providing rapid response, trauma-informed support, and resources for families and communities. I'd like to sincerely thank Dr. Sandra Delaronde for her leadership and dedication, along with all the community members who contributed to this life-saving initiative. During these 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, let us stand together and act with urgency, because every alert, every minute, and every life matters.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Let's go. Every trip to the grocery store, it seems like the prices you pay are getting higher and higher, because they are. If groceries feel expensive right now, then it's only going to get worse, because a new report this week shows that the price of groceries is going to go up $1,000 per family next year. And it's no coincidence that the Liberals are also raising taxes on the people who grow and ship and sell the food. So doesn't this government realize that higher taxes on farmers and truckers means more expensive for groceries for struggling families?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Finance.
Well, Mr. Speaker, every farmer knows that you reap what you sow. What the Conservatives are sowing every day in this House is the distrust of Canadians, because they're insincere when they weaponize people's struggles for their political gain, while voting against every single affordability measure that puts more money in Canadians' pockets. That includes an income tax cut for $22 million, the Canada Child Benefit, cutting the consumer carbon tax, child care, dental care, over $2,000 of support, direct benefits that put more money in Canadians' pockets with young children. How can they say they're...
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
So angry, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are standing in food banks and food bank lines at record numbers, while these Liberals pat themselves on the back. Exactly. Feeding kids starts with making food more affordable. This is the same government that forced millions of Canadians into a food bank, and now saying that people should be thankful for the programs that they can't quantify and can't deliver. Just 10 years ago, you used to be able to go grocery shopping for a week and spend $160. It's now more than doubled to $340. So when will these Liberals admit that their policies have failed and Canadians are struggling?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, what feeds Canadian families is good paying jobs and a strong social safety net, both of which the Conservatives oppose. They can't even bring themselves to recognize when job numbers exceed expectations month over month over month. To 3 months in a row, the Canadian economy has added 181,000 new jobs, including 54,000 this month. We've seen a drop in the unemployment rate in this country. Conservatives can't even acknowledge when the Canadian economy does well, because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Exactly. Well said. The honourable member for Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, let's look at the actual job numbers that member was trying to reference. 9,400 full-time jobs lost in the last month. Now, these Liberals want to try to pretend that they're doing better by adding those part-time numbers in. But the fact that Canadians are desperate, they're turning to part-time work because full-time jobs are not available, and they desperately need that part-time work to feed their families. That's not something to celebrate. A continuing decline in full-time jobs in this country is not something to celebrate. When will the Liberals recognize the reality that Canadians are losing the full-time work that they need to provide for their families?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Secretary of State.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have good jobs numbers to share. This morning, I am proud to say that last month, 50,000 young people got a job. In November alone, 21,000 young people found a job in October. The numbers are trending in the right direction. We are there to support young Canadians. We are proud of our job numbers on this side of the House.
For Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, in that member's province, Quebec lost 35,000 full-time jobs.
35,000 full-time jobs lost in Quebec, and that parliamentary secretary, that minister says that this is an improvement, that this is good news. Mr. Speaker, it's shocking that this government would celebrate a significant decline in full-time work. Canadians are looking for full-time jobs so they can provide for their families. When will they stop congratulating themselves and recognize the problem?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Jobs and Youth.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is right now, the members across the way have ground committee work to the halt. We would like to send C-15 to committee. Doing so would allow us to make the necessary investments that Canadians need right now. It is shameful, Mr. Speaker, what is going on in our committees. I call on the members across the way to do things differently and allow committees to move forward. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister said that he could be judged based on grocery prices. Now we live in a country where 20% of people have to depend on food banks, a country where groceries for a family of 4 will cost $1,000 more in 2026. A country where the prices of beef, pork and chicken are all going up. Mr. Speaker, that is Liberal Canada for you, the country where grocery bills have more than doubled since 2015. When will the Liberals stop their inflationary spending so Canadians can finally put food on their plates? The Honourable Secretary of State. Mr. Speaker, we will take no lesson from the members across the way who voted against every single opportunity to help out people. They are against children, they are against families, they are against school food, they are against investments in affordable childcare, they are against $13 billion of investment in affordable housing. That is shameful. We are against them. Through Budget 2025, we will be supporting families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, 36% of Quebecers are living some sort of food insecurity. 3 million Quebecers. There were 3 million visits to food banks in Quebec. Now the Prime Minister is jet-setting around the world to ignore the fact that 20% of his people are in food lines. That's Canada after 10 years of Liberal government. This is unprecedented. Quebecers are hungry. It will cost them $1,000 more to buy groceries in 2026. Mr. Speaker, why does the Prime Minister care more about his stock index than his people who are suffering? The Honourable Secretary of State for Children and Youth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's clear that if we are to help children and in families, we must invest in their future, and that's what we do in Budget 2025. We are investing in youth employment, affordable housing, food at schools, affordable childcare, dental care. All of this helps Canadian families. We are proud of these measures, and it is a shame that the members across the way refuse to support them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Gaspésie, Les Îles de la Madeleine, Listagouche. Mr. Speaker, today, the Prime Minister will be meeting Donald Trump for the FIFA World Cup draw. But they shouldn't be talking about sports. They should be talking about the economy. The Prime Minister was elected in order to protect us from the American President. He has not secured the victory he wanted. Yesterday, we even learned that the Prime Minister will be ignoring the main request of our forestry sector. He is refusing to support our businesses by protecting them against anti-dumping and countervailing duties. When will we see wins instead of more concessions? Mr. Speaker, it is true that we must continue our negotiations with the United States. We will be at the table for these negotiations. At the same time, we are diversifying our supply chains. We are signing new free trade agreements. For example, an agreement with Indonesia and an agreement with Mexico. Today, here in this House, we are fighting to support our economy. That's not what they are doing. They vote against us at every opportunity. The Honourable Member for Gaspé-Lisieux de la Madeleine-Listegouge. Mr. Speaker, this is not the first concession that the Prime Minister has made because he's scared of Donald Trump. He abandoned the digital services tax, which would have forced American web giants to pay their fair share. Then he abandoned the global minimum tax rate, which was meant to fight tax evasion. I guess he wants to free up some money for the president's new ballroom. Now he's abandoned our forestry industry by refusing to respond to their main request for support. When will the Prime Minister stop backing down and start defending Quebec interests? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and all of us are here to help out everyone, not just one province, not just one territory, all Canadian jobs, all Canadian industries. We are here to build the strongest economy in the G7. We are building new supply chains, finding new partners all around the world. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because the world is changing, the geopolitical situation is changing, and we are adapting to these changes. The Honourable Member for Cote Ward, Kawawa-Chikamach-Natasanen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister should be working to appease our forestry workers, not Donald Trump. The Prime Minister has sold them down the river by refusing the main demand of our forestry industry, support with dealing with the Americans' countervailing and anti-dumping tariffs. Since 2017, the softwood lumber conflict has been raging on, and Trump's tariffs have worsened an existing situation. Our industry is on the brink. People are being laid off. When will the federal government stop neglecting our forestry workers? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, obviously the unjustified trade war that the United States has brought on us on softwood lumber is unacceptable. We're working hard to resolve. Today, the United States Chamber of Commerce called on the Trump administration to drop tariffs on lumber. We are seeing that the pressures are beginning to build. We'll continue to work at all levels to resolve this, and we'll continue to provide supports, and we welcome suggestions from members opposite on what supports to bring.
The Honourable Member from Barrie South. The Prime Minister told Canadians he should be judged by the price at the grocery store. Well, the verdict is in. The 2026 Canada Food Price Report warns that grocery costs will rise by 4 to 6% next year, meaning the average family of four will pay nearly $1,000 more, bringing annual food costs to over $17,500. 1 in 4 Canadian households is already food insecure, and Canadian families, seniors, and single moms are being squeezed at the checkout. Why aren't these Liberals cutting their inflationary spending, the industrial carbon tax, and their new fuel tax so that Canadians can afford to eat?
Here, here. Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, the rise in food prices is difficult for family, and that's why we're helping lowering the grocery bill through, for example, the National School Food Program. But Professor Sylvain Charlebois, the lead author of the recent study that my colleague just quoted, said, and I quote, "Obviously, what comes back every year are the impact of climate change on prices," noting in particular the effect of drought on the price of beef. If they want real solution, they have to start to look at real facts.
The Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfil.
Blaming climate change for the rise in food prices. The Liberals will say things have never been better, but the reality is that things have never been worse. In Ontario, there were 8.7 million visits to a food bank, and grocery prices are expected to cost families $1,000 more in 2026. The Prime Minister said he should be judged by the prices at the grocery store. Well, the verdict is in, but there's still time for him to enter a plea deal on his lower grocery price promise. Will he plead guilty of breach of trust, fraud, or both?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, it's good jobs and a strong economy that are going to benefit all Canadians. So Statistics Canada this morning announced that we created 54,000 net new jobs, 50,000 for young people alone. Mr. Speaker, we stood up in the House last Friday, we talked about how our GDP is growing. Today we're telling you that wages are up, rents are down, unemployment is down. Youth unemployment has dropped by almost 2 points in 2 months. That is no accident. That is a plan that is working, and that is a plan that these Conservatives continue to vote against.
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister asked to be judged by the prices at the grocery store. Canadians obliging, and the result is a political receipt he doesn't want to read. After 10 years of the Liberal government, Canadians already pay $17,500 a year for groceries, and Canada's food price report confirms that next year Canadians will pay an extra $1,000. When will this Prime Minister finally stop driving food prices through the ceiling and end this daily grocery store misery for Canadian families?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, it is jobs and a strong economy that is going to benefit every family in this country. And that's why it is significant that just this morning Statistics Canada confirmed that we have created over 54,000 net new jobs this past month. When jobs are there for families, families benefit, Mr. Speaker, but it doesn't stop there. Just yesterday, we actually announced a new early learning and childcare deal in Ontario. So parents are going to be saving over $10,000 a year on childcare. Mr. Speaker, those are the kind of real actions that actually help Canadian families, and these Conservatives vote against them.
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, as a single mom of two, I know firsthand that moms and dads want affordable groceries they can buy themselves.
Hear, hear.
They do not want to rely on a government handout. This Prime Minister is giving better deals to his Brookfield buddies than everyday Canadian families.
For sure.
Moms and dads want affordable, nutritious groceries, and again, that they can buy themselves. Will these Liberals ever stop living in their own elite bubble and start living in the real world with the rest of Canada?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, as I said yesterday, we announced a new childcare agreement with Ontario that's going to save families up to $10,400 per year. But don't take my word for it. Christina Meadow is an Ontario mom here in Ottawa, and she says that early learning and childcare has changed her family's future. She says having access to high-quality, affordable childcare is the biggest peace of mind that you can ever have as a parent. So we are happy about the announcement today, Mr. Speaker. That is delivering for families, delivering for kids. Why won't the Conservatives support affordable childcare?
The Honourable Member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
The latest food price report confirms what Canadian families were well aware of, that grocery prices are still going up. The average Canadian family will spend an additional $1,000 on groceries next year, and this is 7 months after the Prime Minister said Canadians would judge him by the prices at the grocery store. Well, that's what Canadians are doing, and they're wondering why the Liberals are increasing their industrial carbon tax, which makes it more expensive to grow, ship, and sell food. They're wondering why the Liberals aren't stopping their inflationary spending. We've given Liberals the solutions. Will they please steal these ideas too?
The Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
I want to start with a quote from an infamous author and professor. Climate change is our agri-food sector's greatest challenge, and we need to address it. You know who Who said that? Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor. On November 1st, 2024, in response to my question at committee. What's interesting is that the members don't take the time to read the report. They will not acknowledge that climate change is real at their conventions. They have no plan to fight climate change, and yet the very person that they quote every day cites it as the greatest challenge for our food system that is increasing food prices.
The honourable member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
Mr. Speaker, groceries are so expensive, Canadians can't afford the bologna the Liberals are selling. $17,500. That's what the average Canadian family will have to spend on groceries this year. A single parent in my riding making minimum wage would need to work 1,000 hours, half their year, just to put food on the table for their children. This has doubled since the Liberals took office in 2015. The Liberals may not do their own grocery shopping, but Canadians do, and they can't afford it. Simple question to the Parliamentary Secretary. How much is a litre of milk?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Finance.
I'm happy to say that I do my own grocery shopping and all the cooking in my household as well. But what's interesting is that Canadian families want an empathetic, compassionate government that actually acts on the challenges and struggles that they're facing, not one that weaponizes their struggles for political gain. We're standing up for Canadians every day. We've offered an income tax cut for 22 million Canadians. We've cut childcare fees by more than in half, saving families $10,000 per year. The Canada Child Benefit put hundreds of dollars in Canadians' pockets. That's how you feed families for generations to come.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford, South Langley.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said he should be judged by grocery prices. 8 months later, they've only gone up. Today's 2026 food price report says things will only get worse. Grocery bills have doubled since 2015. Next year, Canadians are projected to pay $1,000 more on groceries. Instead of lowering costs, the Liberals keep spending more and raising taxes, which drives up prices, especially for food. When will the Liberals cut their inflationary spending, scrap the industrial carbon tax, and cancel their new fuel tax so Canadians can afford to eat?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it's a shame that the Conservatives have attached their political fortunes on the failure of the Canadian economy, on the struggles of the Canadian people. They rejoice when our economy does bad. On this side of the House, we're looking for indicators and signs that our plan is working. And guess what? Today we had another sign that our plan is working to build a strong Canadian economy, which is 54,000 new jobs added to our economy. That's 181,000 jobs added in just the last 3 months. GDP, real GDP has grown faster than expectations. Inflation is within the Bank of Canada's target range.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Lamatypédia. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' climate betrayal did not only cause the resignation of the member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie, 2 experts of the advisor group that was supposed to advise the Prime Minister about climate change also walked out. They said that they were used to being ignored, but now they're not even being heard. In other words, the Prime Minister is silencing everyone around him who cares about the environment, be they ministers or experts. How can the Liberals support a Prime Minister who refuses to listen to science?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And we would like to express our gratitude and thanks to Mr. Donner and Mademoiselle Abreu for their years of service and leadership at the Net Zero Advisory Board. Their important contributions to the board have helped guide our government's work in advancing decisive climate action in Canada, and we're better off for their contribution.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Lamatypédia. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is ignoring environmental science. If the recent resignations did not make this obvious enough, let's hear what the government's lead science advisor, Mona Niemer, had to say. I asked her about the Liberal plan to build major projects like pipelines by getting around every piece of legislation other than the criminal code. She described this as nightmarish. She also confirmed that the Liberals had never consulted her. Do the Liberals find it reasonable that the government is completely sidelining their lead science advisor?
Mr. Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, once again, I want to express our thanks and gratitude to Mr. Donner and Mademoiselle Abreu for their years of service. Our government values the role of the Net Zero Advisory Board as an independent expert body that provides important advice to inform climate policy. We remain committed to working closely with the board, and we continue advancing Canada toward a net zero future.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The holidays are approaching, but for many families, the season will be far from festive. Almost 85% of Canadians have stated that their main financial concern is the cost of food. There was a record 2.2 million visits to food banks in 1 month. Many people in these food lines are even children. Families are cutting back, skipping meals, and eating less nutritious food just so they could make it to the end of the week. How can the Liberals claim to be helping families when their policies are literally starving them? The Honourable Secretary of State. Mr. Speaker, we are there for families. We are investing in their needs. For example, we have invested in affordable childcare, which has reduced daycare costs by 50% nationwide. This helps families pay rent and helps them pay all sorts of bills. The same is true for the Canada Child Benefit. This benefit assists families. However, members across the way continue to oppose and vote against these measures. The Honourable Member from Montmorency-Charlevoix. It looks like we've got Scrooge at the helm, Mr. Speaker. Since the Prime Minister took power, production and transportation costs have shot up. Energy, fertilizer, fuel, all of these costs have risen. Farming debt has increased by more than 14% in 1 year, the greatest increase since 1981. Almost a quarter of Canadians would eat more healthy food if they could afford it. 20% would buy higher quality food. Every aisle in the grocery store is more expensive. This government of Scrooges is proud. When will the Liberals admit that their policies are costing Canadians? Mr. Speaker, it is clear that no parent should worry about their ability to feed their child. That is why we have invested $13 billion in affordable housing to help families. We have also invested in childcare, dental care. All of these measures will help families keep more money in their pockets so that they could afford their daily costs. We will continue to invest in these support measures and in families, including children. I would encourage members across the way from helping us with this important work. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister told Canadians he should be judged by prices at the grocery store. Perhaps he should be careful what he wished for. Grocery prices are climbing. Families can't afford basics, and 85% of Canadians say food costs are their top concern. Canada's food price report says next year families will pay $1,000 more for groceries. When will these Liberals cut their inflationary spending, the industrial carbon tax, and their new fuel tax so that Canadians can simply afford to eat?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, instead of harping on about imaginary taxes that the Conservatives know aren't real and aren't affecting the price of food, they should think about their own conduct in this House. They should think about their votes. And when it comes to our budget does some key things. It improves access to the Canada Disability Benefit. It strengthens EI to protect workers. It increases investments in social and affordable housing. It makes the National School Food Program permanent. You know who considers those four things a priority, Mr. Speaker? The Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto says those are the four things that we should be doing to help Canadians with the price of food. That's what we're doing.
The Honourable Member for Mission, Matsqui, Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, there's 8 million kids in Canada, and the last I count, the national program's not even feeding 2 million. So while families struggle with soaring grocery bills, small businesses are also being crushed by these same inflationary policies and the loss of purchasing power by Canadian families. Canada has 100,000 fewer entrepreneurs than it did today than in the year 2000. That's 100,000 less businesses able to support families and communities. Rising costs, higher taxes, and endless red tape are driving people out of business. Yeah. When will these Liberals admit their taxes and red tape are
the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Speaker, it appears the members opposite have spent so long in the opposition benches that they become so disagreeable that they can't even agree with the things that they've advocated for, which is a shame. Tax cuts for 22 million Canadians, for example, or a GST cut on new home purchases of $50,000 to families. Automated tax benefits. How about tax deductions for businesses so they can invest in themselves to boost their productivity and growth? That's what increases real wages relative to the cost of living. That's how families get ahead. That's how you support Canadians. Why don't the Conservatives get on board?
The Honourable Member for Yellowhead.
This Prime Minister told Canadians he should be judged by the prices at the grocery store. The average weekly food bill was $159 when the Liberals took over, but today it has doubled in the big cities. That doesn't address remote areas like Grand Cache and most of my riding, where it's much worse. New fuel standards, industrial carbon tax, and inflationary spending all increase the cost of transportation. When will these Liberals consider the consequences of their legislation and stop the measures so Canadians can afford to eat?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, when will the Conservatives recognize what farmers already know, which is that the industrial carbon price has zero impact on food prices? We've heard this from experts in the House. But, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about what is going to benefit all Canadians. Good jobs and a strong economy. Today's Statistics Canada says we're doing both because we've created over 54,000 net new jobs in this past month. Employment is down. GDP is up. Wages are up. Rents are down. That is delivering for Canadians right across this country.
The Honourable Member for Cumberland-Colchester.
Mr. Speaker, as a newcomer to politics, I'm finding the Ottawa approach to problem solving quite perplexing. I'm proud of this government's focus on delivering for hardworking families through tax cuts for 22 million Canadians, by making sure every kid gets a healthy meal at school, investing billions in infrastructure projects, and creating good jobs in our local communities. But these plans for tax breaks and infrastructure investments are being met with obstruction. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance tell us why are practical solutions being reflexively blocked when hard-working families expect us to work?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Well, I'm proud too, and I'm proud to serve with the Honourable Member from Cumberland-Colchester.
Yes.
There's only one reason, Mr. Speaker, that key pieces of legislation are not moving through this House, and it's the opposition that are blocking it in committee and in this House. They're wasting time and blocking key legislation. It's the opposition that's stopping a first-time homebuyer's tax savings of $50,000 for first-time home purchases. It's the opposition that's stopping the creation of tens of thousands of high-paying jobs. It's the opposition that's stopping the National School Food Program from feeding more hungry children.
The Honourable Member for Caribou, Prince George.
Last week, Drax Pellet Plant in Williams Lake announced it was shutting down. This week, Domtar Pulp Mill in Crofton announced a permanent closure. That's over 1,000 direct and indirect jobs lost. Another 1,000 families who are facing financial uncertainty. It's been 10 years. 10 years, and the Liberals have failed to negotiate a fair softwood lumber agreement with the U.S. The Prime Minister is now in Washington for a third photo op, this time for FIFA. Will he stand up for our devastated forestry families, or will he once again kneel before Donald Trump?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Speaker, obviously, we stand with the affected communities. It's terrible to see the job losses. The Minister has talked to Domtar. The Minister has talked to the BC Minister of Forestry. We want those jobs back, and we're going to work very hard to get them back.
Member for Caribou, Prince George.
They say they stand with the workers who have lost their jobs. Have they stood with them in the unemployment line? Have they stood with them in the food bank line? Have they stood with them when the bank forecloses on their home? Have they stood with them when they've lost their business? Because that's the reality our families are facing. I'm not sure that member fully understands the dire situation we're in. We have entire communities that are drying up in our province of British Columbia. When will this Prime Minister get serious about forestry, protect our families, grow a spine, and stop caving to Donald Trump?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
We stand with them. We stand with them with supports that allow them to keep those jobs. We stand with them when they lose those jobs and are in those unemployment lines with more supports there as well. And we stand with the companies by investing in them heavily. We will always stand with our forestry communities, and I invite the member to work with me to bring even more supports to those communities because it is vital to Canada's culture and economy.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
This Prime Minister invited Canadians to judge him by the prices at the grocery store, Mr. Speaker. 7 months later, shoppers are still going home with half the cart for twice the price. And the latest food price report says it's going to get $1,000 worse next year. Meanwhile, another mill is closing in my community, Mr. Speaker. As more people lose their jobs, anxiety is the only thing up more than the cost of food, as even full-time workers start to rely on food banks. When will the Liberals cut their inflationary spending so Canadians can afford groceries again?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, there has been a lot of good news that's been coming out over the last few months related to jobs. When you take a look in terms of the month of September, you had over 50,000 jobs created. Most of that was in manufacturing, Mr. Speaker. In the month of October, you had over 50,000 jobs created. Most of that was in the province of Ontario. Today, we get the announcement of 60,000 plus jobs. In total, that's well over 150,000 jobs, Mr. Speaker. That is actually good news, and the members opposite should recognize when good news hits you in the face and say, this is a good way for our building a strong...
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Speaker, and these Liberals must be shopping in the fantasy aisle because Canadians are still getting skewered at the checkout. Conservatives voted against policies that make life more expensive. In this Parliament, these Liberals voted against our motions that would have saved jobs, kept communities safe, and lowered costs. Inflationary Liberal spending is driving students, seniors, and now full-time workers to food banks. When will the Liberals stop raising taxes on the people who grow, transport, and sell our food so Canadians can put food on the table?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, talk about fake outrage. Time and time again, we get the Conservative Party of Canada preventing legislation from being able to pass. Even the budget legislation, the implementation of the budget. Day after day we hear Conservative baffle-gab as opposed to allowing legislation to go through. Day and day we hear obstruction on important legislation like bail reform legislation to make our communities safer. Whether it's providing supports for Canadians or providing a sense of security, the Conservative Party is more focused on the Conservative Party than they are on the Canadians. Shame on them!
The Honourable Member for Order. The Honourable Member for Kenora Kiwatinuk.
The Prime Minister says he should be judged by prices at the grocery store, but 7 months later, prices are skyrocketing and Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. And Canada's food price report shows that Canadians will have to pay an extra $1,000 to buy groceries next year. To make matters worse, sawmill workers across the country are facing job losses as their mills close. The Prime Minister promised he would negotiate a trade deal. He's failed to do so, and now he just says, who cares? So, Mr. Speaker, with more Canadians struggling to buy groceries, with more job losses and more broken promises, what is it going to take for the Liberals to finally care?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it's hard to take the Conservatives at their word in this House when they stand up every day and complain about the Canadian economy. Well, we receive good news on this side and rejoice in it. The economy is actually faring well. The IMF just came out with a report and said Canada's economy is weathering the shocks of the tariff war or the trade war better than expected. We've heard that message again and again. The numbers show the same thing. Job numbers exceeding expectations 3 months in a row. Real GDP growth. Real wage growth over 33 months in a row. That's more money in Canadian.
The Honourable Member for Kenora Kiwatinuk.
Mr. Speaker, a report from the IMF means absolutely nothing to the workers in Ear Falls Sawmill who have lost their jobs. They don't want more big government programs, Mr. Speaker. They just want their jobs back. The Prime Minister said he would negotiate a win. That hasn't happened. He said that Canadians should judge him by prices at the grocery store, and prices keep rising. By every standard the Prime Minister has set for himself, he is failing. So if he can't negotiate a trade deal, will he at least cut the inflationary spending? the industrial carbon tax and the new fuel tax, Mr. Speaker, so that Canadians can afford to buy groceries.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, when our government moved forward with the first round of major nation-building projects that would create tens of thousands of good-paying jobs and add to Canada's GDP and economic output, what did the Conservative leader say? He called those projects pathetic. That's what he stood out there in the media and said about projects that would create tens of thousands of jobs. And yet here we are being lectured by the Conservatives today about good job numbers that exceeded expectations 3 months in a row. They can't seem to even get their story straight. Whose side are they on? Are they on the side of Canadians? Are they on the side of affordability?
The Honourable Order. The Honourable Member for Yorkton Melville.
Fertilizer production is essential to our Canadian farmers. Over 118,000 people are directly or indirectly employed by the industry. But this Liberal government's industrial carbon tax puts producers at a global disadvantage, burdening them with up to $1.3 billion in carbon costs by 2030. Domestic fertilizer producers can't pass those costs down to our farmers, as they have to absorb them to compete toe-to-toe with the rest of the world. When will this government finally level the playing field and scrap the industrial carbon tax on Canadian-made fertilizer?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, our farmers are at the front line of something very difficult, very challenging. They are fighting against tariff, the disruption of trade, and they're also about extreme weather events. So that report really clearly said, Mr. Speaker, that increasingly violent and unpredictable weather patterns are disrupting agricultural production, creating supply challenges, and continue to influence food prices across Canada. So, Mr. Speaker, the solution is to stand by with our farmers.
Honourable Member for Yorkton Melville.
If fertilizers challenges ended with the industrial carbon tax. To add to that billion-dollar burden, this government's mandatory bulk fertilizer label changes will cost the industry over $120 million. The Liberals' 30 by 2030 fertilizer emissions target could also lead to $48 billion in losses. These costs are ultimately passed on to Canadian farmers and, by extension, Canadians at the grocery store. Why is this government so obsessed with making it harder and more expensive for Canadian farmers to do what they do best? Feed our country.
Hear, hear. Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, I fully understand how fertilizer use is very important for a producer across country and to supply the world with really healthy food. So we're working on with the farmer, with the industry, to find solution to a fertilizer made in Canada, Mr. Speaker, because in Canada we grow the best food in the world, and we'll continue to work with our farmers to ensure their long-term competitiveness and help protect the environment.
The Honourable Member for Lanark Frontenac.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has adopted a perversely restrictive interpretation of the bulk labelling regulations under the Fertilizers Act. If enforced, the interpretation will impose $120 million in compliance costs on retailers, which will be passed on to farmers to achieve quite literally nothing. If the Liberals are truly committed to reduce red tape, they could instantly override the CFIA by making marginal clarifications to these regulations. Will they do so? Or will they allow the CFIA to drive small retailers out of business and drive up costs for Canadian farmers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, this new government is committed to reduce the red tape across the government, but especially with our agency, such as CFIA and PMRA. Mr. Speaker, in committee, we just finished a study on how to effectively reduce the red tape across the sector to support our producer, to support our farmers and increase their productivity. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we work with our farmers and with our agency to find concrete solutions and help the productivity.
The Honourable Member for Hull Elmer. Mr. Speaker, 36 years ago, on December 6th, 14 young women were killed at the Montreal École Polytechnique, a horrible event that shook the entire country. It is our collective duty to fight against gender-based violence. Can the parliamentary secretary tell this House about the measures taken to honor the memory of these young students and to ensure that an event like this can never happen again? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. On December 6th, 1989, time stopped, and 36 years later, our society still bears the mark of that event. We must continue to fight gender-based violence. On the one hand, we are working to strengthen the criminal code, and on the other, we are working on prevention. We have an action plan that has invested more than $500 million. The security of women throughout the country will always be our priority. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Chair of the Transportation Committee. The Liberals with Canada Post has given a great many contracts to certain companies, and for over a month, the chair of the committee has forced us to use emergency measures to make him do his work. Will the chair of the committee finally call a meeting next Tuesday, or will the chair continue to hide behind his minister?
Transport Committee, the member for Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna.
Du président libéral démontre un mépris pour cette
Mr. Speaker, this government has shown contempt for the committee. It has the chair has continued to suspend the committee for so-called technical reasons, and it never came back. This is an abuse of power. We're talking about road safety and the safety of Canadians. This is serious and urgent. The Liberal chair must decide whether he is at the service of the government or at the service of Canadians. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, I have finally gotten a decent answer. The Minister of Transport has ordered members to harm the work of the committee through Liberal filibustering. This is a waste of money. It's throwing money out the window. Why is the Minister trying to avoid transparency? Why is the Minister trying to hide the truth from Canadians? Why is the Minister sanctioning these obstructionary tactics? Why is the Minister preventing the committee from doing its work, which is harming the road safety of people in Beauce?
Mr. Speaker, we are unwavering in our support for victims and their families that have been impacted by the exploitation and illegal operation with the trucking industry. Now, the Conservatives are always looking to block things in committee. In this particular committee, Mr. Speaker, they have an opportunity to focus on solutions, yet they bring up problems, like they bring up problems here. When the time comes, Mr. Speaker, to vote on solutions for Canadians, they bring up the problem, vote against the solution every single time.
The Honourable Member for Northumberland Clark.
To the chair of the Transportation Committee, it shouldn't take opposition parties calling emergency meetings to get a parliamentary committee just to meet like they're supposed to. But that's exactly what the opposition parties have been forced to do. When we did have a meeting, during the middle of the meeting, they suspended and ran out the back door. So will the chair confirm that there are scheduled meetings, or will he just run out the back door again?
Vice Chair of the Transport Committee.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal chair's conduct shows contempt for this institution. He has refused to convene meetings 3 times and even suspended one for technical reasons before leaving, never to return. Worse, a Liberal MP has been filibustering for the past month, not only resisting hearing from victims, but deliberately delaying recommendations that could save lives. Every day those recommendations are stalled, they put Canadians at risk. That is shameful. A Conservative notice of motion has been filed condemning this misconduct. The Liberal chair must decide, is he a political operative serving the government or an impartial chair serving this country?
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, Ukrainians are fighting bravely for their freedom in the face of unwarranted aggression from Russia. Right now, Ukraine needs military resources such as fuel, medical supplies, communications equipment, and winter gear and more. Can the Minister of Foreign Affairs update this House on how Canada and NATO are supporting Ukraine at this time?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank
the honourable member for the question. Over the past 3.5 years, the Government of Canada has provided approximately $22 billion multifaceted support for Ukraine, military, financial and economic support. And then this week at NATO, I committed another $235 million for Ukraine in defense of their sovereignty and security, and to ensure that their soldiers can make it through the winter as they fight on the front lines against this illegal and unjustifiable invasion. Canada will always stand for the rules-based international order that has kept us all safe since the end of the Civil War.
The honourable member for Regina, Wascana.
Mr. Speaker, in last month's budget, the finance minister said he made tough decisions to find savings. So I was surprised and disappointed to learn that the CEO of Farm Credit Canada racked up $300,000 in travel expenses this year and last year. Furthermore, almost all of those expenses were within Canada to talk with FCC employees at their offices. Why can't FCC spend $20 on a Zoom subscription instead of $300,000 on the CEO's travel expenses?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that the preparations leading up to this year's budget 2025, there was a comprehensive expenditure review that looked at all the operational possible savings that the federal government could make in order to invest in the Canadian economy, to ensure that we have a capital budgeting framework that ensures we achieve capital formation, that we grow the Canadian economy, that we attract investment, that we diversify our trade, that we build infrastructure, defense capabilities, and housing that Canadians want, that we can defend our sovereignty, that we can build an affordable future for all Canadians. That's exactly what this government is up to. We're building Canada strong.
The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, food prices are exploding. Groceries are up 4 to 6%, costing the average household as much as $1,000 more per year. Expert points to extreme weather events, supply shocks, and corporate greed. But, Mr. Speaker, not only do the Liberals not have a climate plan, they keep protecting their corporate friends while people across Canada are starving for a fair deal at the checkout. When will the government act and deliver a real public option for food?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 set out to actually make life more affordable for Canadians, and this member voted against the very programs that are going to support families in her community. Budget 2025 cuts taxes for 22 million Canadians. It makes the National School Food Program permanent. It's going to deliver automatic tax filing for over 5.5 million Canadians. It makes generational investments in housing and infrastructure and supports important programs like the Canada Disability Benefit, Mr. Speaker. These are exactly the programs that are going to help families and make life more affordable for them and their kids.
The honourable member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, coastal communities are running out of time. Key federal programs to protect wild salmon and restore critical habitat expire in March, and they weren't included in this budget. The government still has not confirmed renewal, and communities can't wait for a spring economic statement. On the West Coast, wild salmon are vital for food security, culture, the ecosystem, and the economy. First Nations, hatcheries, and restoration groups are doing the work, but they can't plan without federal certainty. It's essential that we don't take our foot off the gas. Will the minister renew these essential programs now?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to assure the member that the program funding does continue to March of 2026, and I am actively engaging with members across the country to talk about the effect of the program in their communities, what it is that was very strong and what it is that we need to look to into the future. Climate changes, the stock of salmon and other seafoods change, and we need to be able to align our programs to the reality in the waters and in communities. And I'm happy to continue to dialogue with that member.
That brings an end to question period. Ça met fin à la période de questions. I wish to inform the House that the volume of earpieces will now be reset.
CMHC is helping with the apartment construction loan program to make sure that many of those developers can build rental housing on the projects that otherwise would not work as condos. The market goes through cycles, and we've been very fortunate as a country to have decades of the market being stable and growing.
Minister,
unfortunately, that's created affordability challenges.
I don't have a lot of time. If
and
I
right
may
now,
ask
the
a follow-up
affordability
question.
is improving across the country in terms of markets.
In the GTA specifically, housing starts are decreasing. We know that. My particular concern, and I do get calls from constituents of mine who work for different companies that manufacture their doors or the windows or the floors, is that their shifts are decreasing. They are having talks about shutting down. All that skilled labor is going to be lost. That productivity, that capacity, rather, is going to be lost. We are not moving at the speeds that you promised.
Cabena, you're well over your time.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm going to give one short question to each side. Keep it under 2 minutes to wrap it up. So we'll begin with Mr. Ho.
So, Minister, you're spending $219 million per year on a fourth housing bureaucracy, the so-called Build Canada Homes. And what does it do that the last three Liberal housing bureaucracies couldn't do? I mean, you're burning through the equivalent of $4 million per week. And this isn't money for housing or for municipalities. This is money just to pay the salaries of bureaucrats and other overhead. So I just want to get an understanding where that money is going.
Build Canada Homes is a new agency that is scaling up the investments in affordable housing across Canada. And it's offering to our builders, to our building partners, home building partners, a one-stop shop for them to advance their affordable housing projects as fast as they can.
What has this new Liberal bureaucracy achieved in the last week, would you say?
Well, we've already announced a whole set of projects, six locations across Canada on Canada Lands Company land, federal land.
That other bureaucracies that preceded it could not do.
He's calling the partisan.
Build Canada Homes is focused on affordable housing. The government of Canada has not had an agency that's entirely focused on affordable housing for many decades. That's been spread among a number of different agencies and departments. And what we want to do is make sure we've got focus. We have a nimble organization that can get affordable housing built at scale as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible.
$219 million doesn't seem very nimble to me, or to the average Canadian taxpayer. Thank you.
Minister, if you want to choose.
I think it will be a very efficient use of taxpayer dollars when you stack it up against the volume of affordable housing that is going to be built in these years to come. I think it'll be a great investment.
Thank you, Mr. Ho.
Mr. Speaker, it is my great privilege to rise on behalf of the people of Elgin, St. Thomas, London South. I will be sharing my time with my esteemed colleague, the Honourable Member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations. We are seeking this motion because we believe it is critical that the Justice Committee gives Bill C-9 the proper scrutiny, given the alarming details we've learned in the last few days that the Liberal government has reached a secret deal with the Bloc Québécois to have a full-out assault on the religious freedoms of Canadians. There was a story in the National Post on the weekend revealing that the Bloc Québécois' desire to remove fundamental safeguards for religious freedom from the criminal code was going to be supported by the Liberals in exchange for Bloc Québécois support on Bill C-9. Now, in the days since this, Conservatives have tried to actually do proper legislative scrutiny on Bill C-9. The Liberals dared to accuse the Conservatives of filibustering and obstructing, but I want to explain two critical things that have just happened. I realize you are now Madam Speaker. You have transformed before my very eyes now, so thank you for that. The interesting thing here is that we had resources to do our committee's work on Tuesday from 3:30 p.m. when the Justice Committee meeting started until midnight. Conservative members were prepared to go line by line, clause by clause through Bill C-9. And then the Liberals adjourned the meeting at 5:30 after we had only agreed on and adopted one clause as a committee. Yesterday in question period, one of my colleagues, who is a Liberal member on the Justice Committee, got up and demanded that we continue our work Thursday. That's today, Madam Speaker. And then this morning, I look at my email and I see that the Liberal committee chair has cancelled today's committee meeting. The clause-by-clause review of Bill C-9, which the Liberal government said Conservatives were obstructing, has been obstructed by the Liberals. Now, I do not ever make the mistake of accusing the Liberals of competence, but they are filibustering themselves. They are obstructing their own agenda. So the Conservatives are ready to do the work. Now, what I suspect may have happened is the Liberal government has been receiving the similar calls and emails to the ones that have been coming into my office from Canadians who are very alarmed by this amendment and in general by what C-9 means for freedom of expression and for religious freedom. They are alarmed by this. I have received calls from members of the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the Christian community, Hindus, Sikhs, all of them saying that they do not trust that their religious freedoms will be preserved if the Liberal government proceeds with this secret deal it has with the Bloc Québécois to remove fundamental religious safeguards from the criminal code. Now, the Liberal government could clear this up very easily. They could come out and say that we are backing away from this. We are no longer proceeding with our plans to take aim at religious freedom. In fact, I would love to hear one of my Liberal colleagues over there say it. In fact, I hear a great deal of chatter from my Liberal colleagues now. If one of them could just get up and say that they will not be proceeding with these assaults on religious expression and freedom of religion, that would make this country a better place. But we need to do the proper work as a committee. We need to be able to speak to the Canadians affected by this, the Canadians who are alarmed by this. We need to be able to speak directly to the groups that have been excluded from the C-9 study because of this Liberal government's desire to obstruct and filibuster its own agenda. So the reason I'm rising on this motion is because we need to proceed with a proper study. We need to go into all of these communities in Canada, speak directly to those who are so often excluded from the process. I'm thinking specifically of people in ethnic communities that don't necessarily consume mainstream media and are likely better for it. I'm speaking, of course, of people in remote communities for whom accessing committee proceedings in Ottawa is a great challenge. In doing this, we will be able to have a full accounting of exactly what Pandora's box the Liberal government is unleashing on Canadians with its proposed Bill C-9 and the amendments removing religious safeguards. Now, there are going to be, I suspect, some interventions from my Liberal colleagues who will say, no, we are not talking about, in general, freedom of religion. We're just talking about people that conceal hateful, criminal, violent rhetoric in religious language. Well, I have some news for those members. That is already illegal. There is no protection in the criminal code for people who incite genocide. There is no protection in the criminal code for people who threaten violence. There is no protection in the criminal code for people who incite hatred. These religious defenses in the criminal code only exist for two particular charges: the willful promotion of hatred.
I'm going to interrupt the honourable member. Can we have order while a member is making a speech? There's no conversations going on. The honourable member for Elgin St. Thomas, London South.
Yeah. Did she really say that? She said that he shouldn't be. Yeah, you did.
I am not going to intervene on this. Order. Can we let the honourable member for Elgin St. Thomas, London South, conclude his speech? The honourable member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just another example of Liberals trying to silence and censor people they don't agree with. This is exactly why we cannot let what they're trying to sneak in the back door on C-9 pass. This is a Liberal government that has taken every opportunity to put religious freedom and freedom of expression in its crosshairs. This is a Liberal government that freezes the bank accounts of its protesters. This is a Liberal government that, under the guise of protecting children, tries to expand the Canadian Human Rights Act to block what Canadian people can say on the internet. So absolutely, I will take no lectures from any member opposite when we are trying to protect the freedoms of Canadians of all faiths. And incidentally, What I will point out to is the fact that we cannot view any of this in isolation. These amendments to Bill C-9 must also be understood alongside the fact that the Liberal government is changing the definition of hate in Bill C-9. And in doing so, as civil liberties experts, as advocates from the political left and the political right have said, they are putting a murky definition that will make it easier to prosecute people for their thoughts and their beliefs, and in particular for their religious expression. And if you want to know where the Liberals think about this, I would refer you to what the former Liberal Justice Committee chair said, which is that religious scriptures, and he mentioned 3 entire books of the Bible and Torah, are hateful at times. And he said that it should be criminal to quote certain scriptures. Now, we have a pluralistic country. There are people in the House of Commons and people in the Liberal Party that have a range of views. It is possible that the committee chair was out of line and not speaking for the Liberal government. And I will say that I'm very grateful that just a couple of weeks after the member who was chairing the Justice Committee said that people should be criminally prosecuted for quoting Scripture, he was removed from his post. The Liberals removed him as the Justice Committee chair. Oh wait, it was to promote him. He's now the Minister of Canadian Identity. The Minister of Canadian Identity said prosecutors should be able to, I'm going to use his words, quote, press charges, unquote, against people who quote scriptures that he finds offensive, that the Liberal government finds offensive. So this is something where the Liberal government demands Conservatives go along with its agenda, and when we say, all right, let's review line by line exactly what you are trying to do, they cancel the meeting. So we do not know when the Liberal government will decide to get around to this. Perhaps they're dealing with some tumult within their own ranks on how to deal with this. I have had a number of conversations with all members of this House, and I realize there are people representing a variety of faith backgrounds who are members of Parliament for different parties. Perhaps some Liberals who are themselves members of religious communities or represent people who are starting to wonder why the Minister of Justice and the Prime Minister are trying to remove protections to express religious belief from the criminal code, opening faith leaders, individual people of faith, to criminal prosecution if their religious beliefs do not conform to the Liberal government's. We need to be able to do real work as legislators. The Justice Committee must be able to do real work on Bill C-9. And if the Liberals could stop obstructing their own agenda and stand by or reject this amendment, but do it publicly and clearly, and they can do it right now. Any member there can get up in questions and comments and say, you know what? We've listened to Canadians. We are backing away from this, and I invite them to do it at this very second, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Deputy House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it's important, especially today, given the kind of day that we just had. We just had the Minister of Gender Equality, our colleague from the opposite, the Conservative colleague, and the Bloc Québécois and the NDP and the Greens speak about the importance of the Polytechnic attack that happened on women, and the member opposite called it effeminazi hawks, Madam Speaker. Can the member apologize in this House for saying that?
Order. The Honourable Member for Elgin St. Thomas, London South.
Madam Speaker, when I was young, I said a great many things that I regret, and I have paid the price for, and I have apologized for. I was proud to stand in this House yesterday and support my colleague from Kamloops Thompson Nicola's bill to put strict penalties for people who are victims of intimate partner violence. But when the Liberals engage in this cancel culture game, they're proving why they cannot be trusted to hold the authority to put people away for what they say.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith. L'Honourable Député de Drummond.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a lot of trouble understanding the concern.
When prosecutors do not charge people for inciting violence, that is a lack of political leadership.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
I want to thank the Honourable Member for his comments, and I want to say how proud I am to second this motion and of the remarks that he has made this morning. like my colleague, I have received a number of emails from faith leaders in my riding, and I'd like the member to comment on this. One of the things that unites faith leaders across this country is the fact that their congregations are composed of people of all political stripes. And one of the comments I've received from more than one faith leader in my riding is that the reason that they are contacting me, in many cases for the first time, is because while they would prefer to remain apolitical, this Liberal government, through the amendments to this bill and their support for the amendments to this bill, have politicized their role here and in their congregations. And I'd like my colleague to respond to that. Thank you.
Member for Elgin, St. Thomas, London South.
I thank my colleague from Nanaimo, Ladysmith, for this question and for all that she has done to champion the fundamental freedoms of all Canadians, certainly those of faith. What's so important here is that this legislation was brought in under the guise of protecting religious communities from hate. That was how the Liberal government sold this legislation. But the most vocal critics of it have been religious individuals and groups themselves who now see the devil, pardon the pun, being in the details, that this will be used to crack down on religious expression. And the point that I will make is that politics has no place governing, legislators have no place governing what is said at the pulpit, whether we're talking about Christians, Jews, Muslims, or anyone else. So, my goodness, we need to stand up for all people of faith. It is not for us in this chamber to legislate or govern or regulate what Canadians with deeply held religious convictions say. And again, it's certainly not the government's purview to define hate in a way that tramples down on liberties of Canadians.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Brantford, Six Nations. Brantford, Brent North, Six Nations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Always a pleasure to rise on behalf of the good people of Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations. And I too share many of the concerns of my colleague who just spoke. We have seen firsthand, in my respectful opinion, a masterclass of Liberal hypocrisy. On full display yesterday during question period, when the member who is a sitting Liberal member of committee from Duvel, Le Chêne, La Selle, essentially said as follows: Mr. Speaker, after weeks of Conservative delays, the Justice Committee finally resumed its work on the Combating Hate Act, and we will continue that work on Thursday, meaning today. Will the Conservatives make sure bail reform is passed before Christmas? Could the minister speak to the importance of keeping this work moving so Canadians can have these important justice reforms take place? Clearly, a question posed by the Secretary of State, who responded in turn by saying, Mr. Speaker, Canadians have been clear that they want stronger protections in the face of rising hate, and they want meaningful bail reform. After weeks of Conservative delay tactics and stalling in committees, I am really happy to see that they might move forward on the combating hate crime legislation on Thursday. So, to much my surprise and the surprise of all of my colleagues, I get to the office this morning at 8:30, look at my P9 inbox, and there is a message from the clerk of the Justice Committee announcing that today's important meeting was cancelled. Cancelled by the Liberal chair, probably as a result of the absolute split in that Liberal caucus as to how to properly deal with this particular religious exemption defense. At no time, Madam Speaker, did this Liberal government ever project any intention of removing that religious exemption. So behind closed doors over the past weekend, they approached the Bloc Québécois member who has been steadfast in his position that that particular exemption needed to be removed. They worked out a deal that they would support that particular amendment, largely if the Bloc Québécois would continue to support the eventual passage of Bill C-9. Very, very dangerous hypocrisy at its finest. We have experienced, as the former member, my colleague, has indicated, Madam Speaker, we've had abrupt cancellations of meetings. We've had abrupt endings of meetings. We've allocated resources to go to midnight this past Tuesday, abruptly ended at 5:30 as a result of religious leaders who are following this, not only locally, following this right across Canada. I too am receiving a lot of feedback of expressed concerns about what this Liberal government is prepared to do, and they abruptly adjourned. So I would only surmise that there is a lot of internal conflict between the Justice Committee and the direction from the PMO on this particular issue. So at the heart of the Bloc Québécois amendment, this is something that they tried to pass through a couple of years ago, did not make it past first reading. They referred to an incident of a radical imam from Quebec in October of 2023 who gave a speech at a pro-Palestinian rally where he said, quote, "Allah, take care of these Zionist aggressors. Allah, take care of the enemies of the people of Gaza. Allah, identify them all, then exterminate them, and don't spare any of them." That is what they are relying upon. And of course, and I will explain further in my speech, ultimately, the prosecution service in the province of Quebec declined to proceed. Now, today in the National Post, I read a very interesting article from Christine Van Gen, one of the top constitutional lawyers in this country, part of the Canadian Constitution Foundation. And the title of the article, Madam Speaker, "Changes to Bill C-9 aren't combating hate, they're criminalizing faith." She says, to secure Bloc Québécois support for its censorious Bill C-9, the Liberals have reportedly agreed to a troubling trade, removing the long-standing religious defense from Canada's hate speech laws. This would be a mistake. Throughout the Justice Committee's hearings, Bloc MPs fixated on this defense. Their central example, repeated to nearly every witness, was that Iman example I referred to. These comments were rightly condemned. They are grotesque. Complaints about them were investigated, and the RCMP prepared a report. It was reviewed by 3 Crown prosecutors who concluded that no charges were warranted. As Quebec's Director of Criminal and Penal Prosecutions put it, the evidence does not establish beyond a reasonable doubt that the words spoken constitute incitement to hatred against an identifiable group under Section 319 of the Criminal Code. She says, one may argue that Zionist was just code for Jews. One may also believe that praying for death is morally abhorrent, but the decision not to charge Chikari turned on the basic threshold of incitement to hatred, not on the religious defense under Section 319. That's a very important distinction that the Bloc never repeats, that the Liberal government has never cited. There was no indication for the prosecution service that the religious defense was an impediment to prosecute or was even considered. Logically speaking, Madam Speaker, it is also true that anyone who thinks Chikari was not charged because of the religious defense must also believe that his speech was given in good faith and therefore was reasonable and delivered without malicious intent. She says further, even if it had involved the defense, one inflammatory prayer at a political rally is not a justification for dismantling a safeguard that protects millions of Canadians from state intrusion into matters of faith. That's what this Liberal government continues to do and has done not only in this particular Parliament, but in the 44th. The religious defense has also been essential to the constitutionality of the hate speech prohibition itself. In the Supreme Court decision in Keegstra, they wrote that the offense is a minimal impairment on the right of freedom of expression, in part because of the presence of the Section 319 sub 3 defenses. The courts upheld the law because the religious exemption exists. Remove it, and the constitutional floor collapses. But even beyond constitutional risk, removing the defense is a profound moral and civil liberties mistake. We should not want, let alone empower, prosecutors to criminalize any form of prayer. Religious texts across traditions contain pleas for justice against enemies, metaphors for divine retribution, and expressions of anguish, symbolism, and cosmic struggle. This is not the realm of the police. If the state begins parsing palms line by line in a courtroom, then we have forgotten why the Charter exists at all.
Hear, hear.
And I see my time is fastly coming to an end. All the more reason for everyone in this House to support our motion to ensure that every major stakeholder who wishes to express an opinion to defend the religious expression that we have in this Charter needs to be heard. If the Liberals won't do it on their own, we are asking collectively this House to do that. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires, l'honorable député de Lac.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to reassure my Conservative colleagues. The Bloc isn't on a mission against people who have faith or people who preach. The Bloc Québécois is I'll ask the Honourable Member to wait just a couple of seconds so the Honourable Member can put in his earpiece. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean from the beginning, please. Yes, I'd just like to reassure my colleagues. The Bloc Québécois isn't on a mission to, against people who have faith or people who represent various religions. Not at all. The Bloc Québécois wants to have an article removed from the criminal code which allows for calls of hatred or violence under an exemption. And in terms of the Charkaoui situation, I know the Conservative colleagues stand up often to defend the Jewish community, and the Jewish community in Quebec was very hurt by what happened with Mr. Charkaoui, and there was no that he was not brought before justice. So the Jewish community in Quebec supports the Bloc Québécois in its effort, and there is a wide consensus in Quebec to support the Bloc Québécois' mission to take this provision out of the criminal code. Is my colleague against the National Assembly of Quebec, which has unanimously supported the Bloc Québécois' position on this issue.
Brant South, Six Nations.
The member clearly did not listen to my speech. The issue is not the religious exemption itself. It is the legal threshold that prosecutors must take a look at when presented with a case. Is there a reasonable prospect of a conviction? Is it in the public interest? As I indicated, the words of that radical Islam were disgusting, absolutely abhorrent. But it did not meet the threshold of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It had absolutely nothing to do with Section 319. That was the heart of my speech, Madam Speaker. And this member needs to realize, and if he has a lawyer that's within the caucus, perhaps that lawyer can do a little bit of research for this member, that for several decades, that particular defense has been seldomly used without any success whatsoever because of the existence of current criminal provisions that deal with incitement to hatred.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Peace River, Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member colleague for that speech. It was a great speech. I know I'm part of the Christian community, and with many Christians across Canada are concerned about, we've talked about the threats that it really poses to the very Bible itself. Do Christians, are they do they need
November
to be
alone,
concerned about
unemployment now down to 6.5%. Could the member please, in the context of everything...
Honourable member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
They should be very afraid. Every faith leader should be very afraid as to what this Liberal government, with the support of the Bloc Québécois, wishes to do. As I indicated, religious freedom is under attack at the hands of this Liberal government. So absolutely, they need to speak out loud and clear. Those members of the religious organizations across this country in Liberal-held ridings, in bloc ridings, need to reach out to their members to express very, very clearly they do not support this attack on religious freedom.
The Commons General Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, so thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm disappointed in the Conservative Party, in particular a member who has been involved in the judicial system to plant fear in the minds of Canadians. And that's all the Conservative Party of Canada is doing today, Madam Speaker. It's shameful. The member knows full well that this is not an infringement on the freedom of religion. And if he had an ounce of integrity, he would indicate very clearly that the pastors, preachers, imams have nothing to fear.
I have a point of order from the honourable member for Sherwood Park, Parkside.
The comments made were clearly unparliamentary. I don't think I need to explain why.
There was a question. It wasn't an accusation. The honourable member would perhaps wish to reword his question.
Madam Speaker, I can appreciate they're a little sensitive to the truth. At the end of the day, Madam Speaker, this has no infringement on the freedoms of religion, and the member knows that. Why won't he say it?
The honourable member for Brantford, Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
That particular member just spews hatred, spews disgust. He impugns the integrity of every one of my Conservative colleagues. And I am so disgusted in that particular framing of the question and the content of that question, I'm not even going to respond, Madam Speaker, because it's just not worthy of it.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. There's a couple of issues that I'd like to be able to bring to the attention of the House and for the individuals that would actually be following this debate. People should be concerned, Madam Speaker, really concerned in two different ways. First is the subject matter itself. And if I had the amount of time to just go through some of the things that have been provided to me, Madam Speaker, and I usually don't like to go to things that are provided in a written format, and I might end up doing that, and just to provide some assurances to people that are following the debate in regards to the subject matter itself. Then I have another area of concern, and that is the way in which the Conservative Party of Canada continues to be that destructive force on the floor of the House of Commons, Madam Speaker, because it does a great disservice to Canadians. And I think that Canadians in particular should be aware of that. But first, very briefly, I'll deal with the subject matter in a very short and concise way. Back in the 70s, Canada adopted the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. To the best of my knowledge, all members of the House support that particular charter.
That's right.
It was Pierre Elliott Trudeau that brought it in, and I remember actually witnessing in my own home the signing of that particular document. It is one of the reasons why I had taken an interest in politics. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, that Canadians are very proud of the Charter of Rights. It is something in which I believe has been a leader throughout the world in terms of what Canada is all about in terms of our fundamental principles, such as democracy, such as...
Scott Russell Cumberland.
Mr. Speaker,
As we move into the holiday season, I rise today to honor one of the greatest women I know, my mother, Leslie Jean Anderson. Jean gave birth to and raised 7 children. She made every meal from scratch and built our home on a foundation of devotion and generosity.
Like so many women across the country, she is one of our country's unsung heroes. Women take care of their families without pay, often without rest, and they reinvest almost everything, their time, their energy, and their hearts into their families and their communities.
This holiday season, let us recognize these extraordinary women, our mothers, for what they truly are, nation builders. Wishing everyone, especially the mothers in Prescott, Russell, Cumberland, and across Canada, a very happy holiday season. Joyeuses fêtes.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Algonquin, Renfrew, Pembroke.
Hark the herald, Brookfield PM sleigh is near. Bringing gifts for all his friends is here. Consultants cheer, lobbyists sing, corporate stockings overflow with bling. Now the PM poses by a door, a photo op that's only decor. Fake homes for the cameras flash, but taxpayers send real cash. Brookfield's modular dreams take flight on subsidies through Christmas night. Insiders feast while young workers fall. This isn't charity, it's a corporate haul. While steel workers lose their pay, Brookfield cashes in today. Tax credits wrapped with care and with bows, handouts for customers, everyone he knows. Arc furnaces hum, the contracts flow, electric riches make profits grow. But for families left in the cold, this tale of cronyism must be told. Canadians deserve a fair refrain, not the PM's plan for insider gain. Let's put the workers first, not billionaires, and bring real hope to he who really cares.
Yeah. The honourable member for Labrador.
Mr. Speaker, I count it a great honour to speak today. On December 1st, we marked the 20th anniversary of the Labrador Inuit Land Claims Agreement. This historic treaty between the
good to see you again.
Absolutely.
The
government of Canada,
I know, and I know you're part of the Soccer Converted. Have you had to explain to some members of your staff how significant this is? It's not the UN General Assembly. I know it's not the Davos Economic Forum. What do you think on today with Canada taking center stage the World Cup draw means?
It's fantastic. I mean, as you know, this is the #1 sport for Canadian youth, Canadian boys and girls. 2/3 of Canadians watched the last World Cup. We were first in '86. John Catliff is here. We scored our first goal in the Qatar World Cup. I had the privilege of seeing that. The country is excited. We're just going to get more excited. Can't wait to welcome the world. I'm really looking forward, as I think all Canadians are, to see who's in our group, and I'll play a small role in determining that.
I asked Jesse Marsh. I got you on the spot. Who do you want to see in Canada's group, and who don't you want to see?
Hey, we're up for anyone. We're 100% behind Jesse and the team. Love to see anyone. Obviously, we want to mix. We want to mix from different continents, different styles of play. We've got a club that's got a great attacking style, as you know. So these games are going to be exciting. And whoever comes, there'll be a Canadian who has a tie to that homeland. In some cases, there may be a lot if we end up getting the winner of the European playoff, for example. But we'll see. We're going to find out, in an hour and a half, I guess, and it's going to be fantastic.
Always a pleasure, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you.
Pleasure. I look forward to seeing you at the first match. All right.
This morning in Ottawa, the Liberals made an announcement, a very serious one, that they are planning to work with the Bloc Québécois to